Welcome to the podcast. This week, I want to focus on change and transition and how do you put yourself in the best position to be successful with each, knowing that change is hard, knowing that transition is hard, and knowing that it is ultimately part of life. And we're going through a pretty interesting transition right now where our youngest son is getting ready to go to school, go away to college. So we'll be empty nesting. And one of the things that I did not have an appreciation for was how much this would hit me and how hard it would hit our family. When I say hard and how much, what I mean there is the emotion of both transition and moving forward and hoping that you've created an operating environment for them to be as successful as possible. And I know that sounds very kind of robotic, and that's how I communicate, talking about operating environments, working through learning, putting systems in place, and all of that other kind of stuff. Well, you can do all of that, but there's still more. There's this other piece, which is the connection, and the connection both to memories of what the past was and connection to what we believe the future will bring. So let's talk a little bit about that. If you're a family that's gone through one of these transitions where you're now at a point of empty nesting and you're looking toward what's next, what's your process? And I'll share a little bit about my process and how I'm looking at it. One of the things that I'm doing is thinking about, okay, well, what are some of the simple pieces of information that I can share right now to help support him from both a mindset, skill set, and tool set perspective. Mindset being attitudes and beliefs. That perspective of, hey, you know what? It's going to be tough. There'll be challenges that are going to be out there. Things will happen that you don't expect or anticipate. And as long as you're here, you're going to be able to work through them. So there's always an opportunity to continue to keep moving forward. And having that attitude and belief set can help you move through some of the really tough times. It's also comfortable, I think, to know that you're not alone and you're not the only person that's dealing with some kind of transition, whether it's your kids going away to school or it might even be losing a job and looking toward what's next, or being frustrated with the job and looking toward what's next. So the first piece is that mindset around no matter what comes my way, I will be able to figure it out. I may not know the exact steps. I may not know how long it takes, but I will be able to figure it out. And I have a team of people that I can lean on. And in his case, he's got his family and he's got friends and so there are resources that are available. So mindset is critical. Attitude and belief. What attitude do you bring to each situation, and how do your beliefs impact or influence that attitude? So then on the belief side, I think the belief, so there's the attitude of I can do it, and there's the belief of things will work out, things will get better. There's a vision of the future that is better than the current state, whatever that current state is. And that current state could be, hey, I got on the wrong bus, or it could be I missed a bus, or it could be whatever, but it will get better. It will get better. You can move from current state to desired state. The big challenge is being really clear about what that current state is. So being honest with yourself about what your current state is. How are you doing financially? How are you doing physically? How are you doing mentally? How are you doing emotionally? What's your personal assessment of current state? And then what's our view of desired state? Where do I want to go? Where do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to test? If I understand the difference between current state and desired state, I can design for next logical steps and start taking them, rather than being stuck and overwhelmed with the idea of, hey, you know what, it's just too much. Because there are times where it will feel like it is just too much. So that's the attitude and belief side of things, so mindset. Now, on the skill set side of things, this is the one that's super, super hard, primarily because you should continue to build skill set over time. You should acquire new skills. Some of the skills that I am very happy with my capability around is the ability to ask questions and listen. And On the listening side, the thing that's important is if you listen well, you can determine what the next question is that you should ask to get a better understanding. Do I want to validate understanding? Do I want to confirm understanding? Do I want to go deeper on something? Do I want to help somebody unblock something that they're working through? So one of my skill sets that I continue to improve and continue to hone is questioning. And then on the other side, it's listening. And that gets into communication. So building a skill set of communication. Now, on the toolset side of things, when you apply your knowledge and understanding of communication to a scenario, you can use a tool like a call plan or an effective communication tool, which you guys have seen. It's the who am I communicating with? What do I anticipate are their objectives? What are our objectives and what are our desired next steps? And if I design around that and I use a tool like that, then I can reduce risk. I can gain leverage in the way that I communicate with others or the way that I receive communication. And that next step piece is critical as it gets back into that piece of continuing to move. We're continuing to move forward. We're continuing to move toward an objective. We're not getting stuck. Here's another tool that you may want to consider. We just talked about the communication tool. So again, tools help you create leverage. Another tool you might want to consider is the problem-solving tool, that hexagon. As you're working toward whatever it is that you want to achieve, you again move from current state to desired state, as we had talked about a little bit earlier. Maybe the problem that I want to solve is getting from where I am to where I want to go, or where I want to be. So I understand what that is, and I know why. I work through the hexagon and think about, why am I stuck? Why am I not able to move things forward? Why does this challenge or why does this problem persist? And that's on if you're looking at the hexagon on a piece of paper, be on the left side, that first left side. Remember, we're doing this as an individual. We start at the top with what problem, then we move to the left for why. If we're doing this as a group, we start with what at the top, and then we move to the right, which is who. That's just different application of the same tool so that we can create leverage and reduce risk when it comes to problem solving. So what problem am I trying to solve, getting from point A to point B? Why does it persist? Why am I stuck? Let's get some of those pieces listed out. The second one is, why is it important for me to get there? Why is it important for me to solve? Why is it important for me to get from A to B? And that starts to get into things like stakes, the benefit, the positive impact of getting there, the risk of failing. Who is on the other side of the hexagon? Who has the problem? It's me. Who's impacted by it? Might be my family and friends. Who cares about me? My family and my friends. And then I can think about, of those people, who might have an additional perspective around how we might solve for the challenge or why the challenge continues to persist. And I joke about it and say that's the Mary Poppins approach to problem solving, because if you draw a little umbrella underneath the top part of the hexagon, it looks like a Mary Poppins umbrella. Then we can get into things like how. How are people solving for this today? Let's do some research, figure out, how do people solve for the thing that we're working through, this challenge of change? How might I solve for it? Get those things listed out. I'd limit myself to 3 bullet points on any of these questions, no more than about 3 bullet points, because if you start to go more than 3, you're going to get yourself kind of caught up in analysis paralysis. If you really feel like you have to do more, go 5 and then prioritize. But I would limit yourself to 3 and at least get one thing down. So how do people solve for it today? How am I going to be able to solve for it in the future? How might I do it? When do I want to solve for that by? What's the timeline? And then let's build out our 30, 60, 90 at the bottom of the hexagon, that short-term, medium-term, long-term. And the whole thing around short-term, medium-term, and long-term is, it's like looking at it saying, hey, when I get to the end, this is the step that needs to happen right before there. So I understand what the end looks like. I'm beginning with the end in mind, leveraging my cubby. I've got an idea of what the middle might be, kind of where the midpoint is to demonstrate progress. And then I get really specific about what the action is that I'm going to take next so that I can start making progress. And that's another tool that you can add to your tool set to help create leverage and improve, in this instance, problem solving. So here we're going to improve problem solving. So we talked a little bit about communication, building our communication skills, and then using a tool like the effective communication tool, or that square, the call plan, to help improve and gain leverage there. We talked a little bit about problem solving. and that moving from current state to desired state, and how we might apply the hexagon in that environment. If you want to work with me on any of these tools, if you have any questions around the tools, please send a direct message to me. And the best way to direct message me is either going to be in a Slack channel. If we're part of the same Slack channel, that's probably the best. You can send me a text message, or you can also send me a direct message either via LinkedIn or Twitter. Those are two places where I'm pretty active. And a lot of times, I think when you're going through a transition, or at least I can share, for me, when I'm going through transitions, it's how do I avoid feeling like I'm stuck, feeling like I'm not making the kind of progress that I want to make. So just some general thoughts as we're going through the process of dropping a kid off at school, thinking about how this transition kind of applies and how important it is to make sure that you go into things with the right mindset. Because if you go in with a negative attitude or a lack of belief, you are setting yourself up for failure. It's going to be super hard for you to be able to break through whatever the challenge is that you're going through, because every time you run into some resistance, you'll go back into that feeling of, hey, I'm not worthy, or maybe this isn't for me, or maybe this isn't the right thing, whatever that is. So first, make sure you get your mind right, get that mindset going, then take advantage of some of the skills that you have already built and apply old skills into a new context to move things forward. It's actually a really cool way to create innovation inside organization. Apply skills that you've learned in another operating environment to a new operating environment, and innovate and create and build. And then use tools to create leverage. I'd like to hear what you think about these individual podcasts. I didn't go through any questions for this specific week. We'll get back into that next week. If you have questions you'd like me to cover, I'm happy to do so. And again, I'll do these either on Thursday, Friday, or Saturday, just depending on schedule. And then on Mondays, we always will have a guest on. And if you'd like to get a newsletter from us on Sunday mornings to help you learn something new, think about how it applies, reflect on how it may relate to other things that you already know, and then build an action plan. So learn, think, act. Check us out at findmycatalyst.com, and you can subscribe to that newsletter. And it's a very short newsletter that's practical. The intention there is to help you apply the new learning immediately, so that you accelerate speed to impact and you accelerate time to application of the knowledge. And ultimately, once you do the work and you apply the knowledge, then you can determine, is this the right kind of work for you or not? Remember, you cannot reflect on what you're going to do. If you know somebody who would gain value out of this episode, please share it with them. Share that via LinkedIn or Twitter. That's where I'm active. Cool to see some of the work that's happening on Instagram. Sean's doing some really good stuff there. If you have a question that you'd like me to address on the podcast, or a scenario that you'd like me to work through on the podcast, please let me know that as well. Sales is a thinking process. Business is a thinking process. Life is a thinking process. How are you thinking different about yours?